Thank you so much for having me here. I've been following your page, and I've got to say that it's really courageous work what you're doing, speaking about all the difficulties and challenges in schools right now. But it really is important that we have a platform to talk about that. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to be here and tell you a little bit about me and share the work that I do. My name is Bernice Erazo. I am a firstborn Mexican American, first generation college grad, was raised in Compton. So I
Wow.
am from the communities that we serve. Let's see, I'm the eldest of five, so that tells you a lot about my personality, a go getter,
Mhm.
childhood trauma survivor. And the reason, and you'll see why I mentioned that in my introduction, but I'm a wife, I'm a cycle breaking mother of three kids. I'm an educator, a school leader, and I'm a coach. Over the last 20 years, that's what I've been doing across LA and also across the state.
The thing that resonated me with the most was when you said cycle breaking mother. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that when you're a first generation, you're a daughter of a you're a daughter of immigrants.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a lot of struggle involved, and we know that our parents did so much to get us here, and in that process, there was a lot of struggle and a lot of trauma that came with it, and a lot of our families were also leaving trauma behind from their mother countries, and so as they did the best that they could, they also made a lot of mistakes inadvertently. And generational trauma gets carried down in our genes. So even if they were the best parents trying to be the best that they can, as all parents try, there's cycles that are really hard to break if you're not intentional. And so I've been very intentional in the way that I raise my children, making sure that I raise them in a way where they feel safe to be themselves, safe to speak their mind, that they consider themselves to be equals when it comes to who they are and whether their voice matters in my home, which has taken a lot of learning and growth on my part so that I don't parent the way
Yeah.
I was parented.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I feel the same way. I feel like I had to break some cycles as well. Being where I'm at right now, there are some things that when I was raised, it was acceptable, and I guess my parents were doing the best that they could as well. Um, But I know that when I was raising my own kids, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do the same thing. I can't do that same thing. Like my dad, I love my dad, um, but he was a very angry man, and he would get upset, and he would yell, and there was like he ran the household a little bit, with fear, like it's his way, and that's it. And I was real stubborn as a kid, extremely stubborn, and almost ready to
You were a
die.
leader. You were a leader. That's
Yes,
what
yes,
I'm called.
as a leader. I like to. I'm gonna say stubborn though. I'm gonna say stubborn, and I was no joke. I was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm willing to take whatever punishment you're gonna give me. And I know that you could
Yes.
literally kill me. You could literally kill me, but so be it. My
Yeah.
life might be short.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Well,
And I was like, I can't do that with my kids, and it took a while. I had kids super young, and it took me a while to be a better man, and not fall into the same traps maybe that maybe plagued my own father. Um, and again, he was trying to do his very best,
mhm.
and no knock on him,
Yeah.
no knock on him. And then I felt like that translated in the classroom. I felt like
Absolutely.
I needed to break some cycles.
Yeah.
I would see things and I was like, okay, how do I help these kids? How do I help the most vulnerable population of kids? How do I help the kids that are stubborn and they're leaders, they're
Mhm.
stubborn and they're strong-willed and they're just not gonna listen. They're just not gonna fall in the line. Like if you tell them to do something, they'll question like, why? Why do I gotta do that?
Yeah.
Because you told me. Who are you? Like
Yeah.
and so I really related with those type of students that I was like, let me see how I can help these guys.
Yeah. For me, it was because God gifted me with a very strong-willed daughter.
Mm,
And so that was my journey too. And I thought if you just raise them right, they'll come out right. but
Mm,
that's not how the cards are
mm,
dealt, right? Like kids come
mm,
into this world already with their own soul and their own mission. And I remember I tried everything that I had learned going to school to be a teacher. And I started off as an ABA therapist. So it was
mm,
all around how to use like incentives and how to be very clear with expectations and rewards. And here's a system. And when that wasn't working, the only thing we had to resort to was spanking, is what
yeah,
we were
yeah,
taught, right?
yep.
And I remember very clearly that I raised my hand once and my daughter was like, "Oh, you're gonna hit me? Hit me, hit me. Watch."
Yes, yes,
She was 4.
yes.
She
That
was
yes.
4.
Mm. I love it.
Oh my God. So I had to
Oh,
learn. I had to find another way. I had to find another way. So that's when I started really doing my research and learning about gentle parenting. And that's really what's translated into the work that I do as an educator, but even now as I coach and support school leaders in their work as well.
yeah. I remember when I was a kid, and you know, me and my mom, we have a strange relationship. But my mom, when I was little, we didn't really get along too well. And I remember her hitting me, and I would say stuff like, "Hit me more. Does that
Oh.
make you feel good? Does that make you feel good? Hit me harder.
Oh,
Hit me harder. Go ahead." And I was young. I
yeah.
was young saying these things like, "Go ahead. Go ahead. Hit me harder. How does that make you feel? Go ahead. Hit me harder."
Mm.
And she didn't know how to take that, and I knew that I had the power now. I knew that I was in control now. Like, oh, that okay. And again, I'm willing to get bruised up, and
Yeah.
like, go ahead, I'll get bruised up, I'll get beat up, go ahead, but I'm gonna win by saying, did that make you feel good? How'd
Oh,
that make you feel?
how old were you when you were saying that?
I was saying it all my whole life,
Oh my
like since I don't know, like 4, like
God.
since a kid, like I would say these things. And I was such a strong-willed child, man. And if it wasn't for my dad, I would say, if it wasn't for my dad being in the household, because there was only one person that I feared, and that was my dad. I feared my dad. I was like, okay, this guy could really kill me. Like, this
Yeah.
guy will really kill me. Like, he'll do it. Like, I felt that. Like, he loved me,
Mhm.
and but he would. I
Well,
sensed it. Like, man,
I bet you could see that there is a possibility of losing control, right?
yeah.
Of not fully seeing. So as much as he loved you like that, there you can sense that there's dysregulation there that could potentially end up causing you harm.
Yeah, and I've talked about my dad on the podcast a few times. He was diagnosed as schizophrenic,
Oh,
and he was diagnosed early, like maybe in his 20s, early 20s. So he was like 20, I don't know, 22 or something like that, 23. And so this was, I'm growing up. I'm 47, so I'm growing up in 1980, and they're giving him different medication, but in 1980 they don't have a good hold on that. They're giving him medication either puts him to sleep or doesn't work, and he's a
mm,
zombie. And so when he said, like, he would say something like, I'm gonna rip your head off and put it through the wall. That's what he'd tell me and my brother. I'm gonna rip your head off and put it through the wall. And we really thought it, like, this guy's crazy. This guy is really crazy. He will really do it. You better listen to dad. Like, oh man, it was, that. So that in the back of my mind is the only person that I was afraid of. And if it wasn't for him, if it wasn't for that guy being in the household,
wow.
um I don't know where I'd be, because he would just steer me back in line, like, no, you ain't gonna go too far. And because of his disability, he wasn't able to work, and so he was on disability for his whole life, pretty
Yeah.
much. And so he was always home. So it wasn't like I had this free time to, like, oh, nobody's home, nobody's here at the house. No, this guy was sitting in that chair right there. He was always there. And so, that's the guy that kept me in line.
Wow.
And yeah,
He
strong
kept you
willed.
safe. You're like, no one's gonna test him because they might
Yeah.
not make it.
Yeah. So that, I mean, childhood trauma, he passed away when I was I 29? He passed away when I was 29. Big blow. And so, but he had a huge impact on my life. And Yeah. And so that all of that all of that shaped me as a man.
Mhm.
And here I am trying to I'm in the classroom, like I said, and I'm seeing these kids. I'm like, that kid is just like me. That girl right there, she has the same spirit as me, and
Yeah.
nobody knows how to reach her, and I think I can. And I think I can reach that kid, that little boy right there. And so that's one of the reasons why, like, I have, my stuff is about how to work with students with difficult behavior. My podcast, we talk about this stuff, and all it is just like stuff that I feel like works in my own experience when working with students like that. I'm like, okay, these are common sense things. I'm just gonna put them out there. They're not that hard. People could learn from them. So yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think I think we underestimate how much of our personality gets shaped in the early years in our childhood. Um, but it's shaped everyone, including educators. And what we went through as kids comes up as how we show up for our students. And so it's
Yeah.
great to see that you were aware and you used what you learned growing up to really connect to students. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes what ends up happening is when educators are not aware of what they've gone through and how it's shaped them, sometimes students end up triggering their own stuff and unprocessed stuff that is they don't
Yes.
fully understand because they've been running away from it or they've been ignoring and coping. And until they take a minute to really take a step to assess how what happened in childhood is shaping their thoughts, beliefs, and patterns now as adults, it's going to continue being a challenge in connecting to students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Um, when I see posts on social media, I'm like, there's something here. There's something deeper that these teachers are talking about that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what?
Definitely.
A lot of them aren't ready to. And that's what's really hard.
Yeah.
You can't force people to be ready to dig deeper and see those things because they're surviving the way that they are by ignoring, right? Some people are
Mhm.
strong enough to actually dig into it and go there. And some are just surviving by just ignoring and keeping
Yeah.
it that way, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It definitely does make sense. When I see some of the posts, sometimes I want to reach out. Sometimes I want to just reach out, see if I could help. Sometimes I'll comment, but a lot of times I'm like, man, I feel like I can't even help. I feel like I can't even help. I can't do anything. But let me just stay in my lane. Let me make my videos, and hopefully they see it, and maybe they'll get something from it. But if I try to give them advice, or if I try to, like, maybe I don't feel like that's gonna work. I feel like if I just stay in my lane and post my videos, and maybe one day they stumble upon it, maybe one day it helps them out. One day they'll listen to a podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It
but
lands for
how?
people that are ready for it. It does land for those. Yeah.
Yeah, how did you start in education? Where did you begin?
Um, well, I always so I mentioned a lot about childhood trauma and so a lot of people will think about what they want to be when they grow up and for me it was just I just want to get an education and be successful so I can get out of this place
Yeah.
and not be limited um, with my I didn't want to be limited to what I could accomplish because of the situation that I was in. So I learned from my home what not to be.
Mm,
And so for me in high school, it was all about get the good grades and move on and just go get a career. And then I got to college, I got into USC, and from
oh,
Compton, I'm like, I'm done.
yeah.
I need it. That's it. Right. And I was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
All my papers were filled with red mark. I was
Mm-hmm.
so upset that all these kids were partying and I was studying and I still couldn't get it. I was salutatorian in my school and getting to
Yeah.
USC, I was failing. I was failing.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I remember being really angry at my teachers. In fact, I went back to campus where I was, high school campus, and I was so upset because I was in AP courses, and I'm like, how did you
Mm-hmm.
not prepare me for this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so one day I saw a Teach for America poster in a building and I wanted to be part of the change. I'm like, yes, I'm so upset about this. I need to go out there and do better for our kids.
Yeah. And that's how I have the same experience. Whereas, like, I remember high school. You get through high school, and I wasn't a good student. Just let me just put that out there. In high school, I didn't really care about school. Let me just say that I did not care about school at all. And I I got lucky to go to college. I went to community college. It was a whole like accident almost. But I remember turning in my first few papers, and I remember failing or getting bad grades. And I remember sitting in a classroom and people were talking and they're so articulate. They could
Oh,
speak
that.
from the top of their head, like boom, politics, anything, religion. They would just be able to do it with such clarity.
Ooh,
And I would shrink. I'd be like, oh my God, I cannot even. I'm. Don't call me. I will sound so stupid. Don't
yeah.
call me. Please don't call me because I would. There's no way that I'll be on par with everybody in this classroom. There's no way. That was for years. That
Yeah.
happened. That was a humbling experience for years, years until I was able to write my own paper and be able
Yeah.
to give an opinion in the classroom.
I still struggle. I still feel like I'm not a good writer. I have to really spend a lot of time really just going through my thoughts and making sure it's fleshed out, using a thesaurus to make me sound smarter, right? Like I
Mhm.
always feel like I don't have the vocabulary. I don't know if it's because I'm a second language learner or what, but word retrieval is still hard for me.
Yeah,
And it isn't until now, like that I've been in professional world for like 20 plus years, that I know now that I don't have to, that doesn't have to really state how smart I am. But it took
yeah,
me so long to really gain confidence as a leader,
yeah.
because of that.
Yep. So you go for Teach for America. You're in
Yeah.
Teach for America, and then what happens after that?
Yeah. So I was a first and second grade teacher. I worked for LA Unified for about 4 years. That was great. I really enjoyed working with student population that looked like me. I mean, I had those parents in there for parent meetings all the time. I felt like I'm going to educate them so that they know how to show up for their kids, not because they don't want to initially, but because they always felt the language barrier was keeping them away. And so, me being bilingual, I would have all these parent meetings, and we would go and take field trips to the university so that they see this is where your
Mm,
child's going to go, but this is how you need to be involved, and this is how you teach them how to learn how to read. So I do a lot of workshops. I was very invested. Um, and then eventually I became a literacy specialist for LA Unified because I just really saw reading as being that key indicator that whether kids got it or not, that really set the stage for their future.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then from there, I ended up moving to Charter Network, and I started working. I founded K-8 charter school. And one part of my role when I became an administrator there is to oversee the small special education population.
Uh,
I know you know how that works. That's one
oh,
part of your role. Like you'll oversee
mhm,
operations, you'll oversee family service, and you'll oversee special education.
and that,
And
yeah,
similar to your trajectory, like that just became my life,
yeah,
because those are the kids. If I really want to support the kids that are underserved and marginalized and the kids that everyone is scared of, those were my kids. Those were them for sure.
yeah, yeah, and so that's where I'm at right now. That's
Yeah.
where I'm at right now. So like most of my most of my career has been general education, all the way up until I became, a dean of students at a middle school, high school, and then I got a little taste of it because I had to go into the classrooms, the special day classes. I had to go in there, and I got a little taste of it. I was like, oh, there's a class here. There's a special ed. Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh,
Like
so sad.
that's true though. That's how it
I
was. Like,
know. I know. I know.
oh, there's a whole world out of this right here. I didn't know that. Oh, you have teachers? like
Mhm.
really, like I very naive, very like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, well, let me help out a little bit. And then, there's behavior problems in there. And then, I become assistant principal over special education at a small school where the special education department is very small. It's like we have one special day class and an RSP class. It's very small. So I'm doing still a lot of gen ed, but I'm
Uh-huh.
still getting a taste of special ed, right? And so I do that for about 3 years. And then currently now I'm in a school where it's like we could probably have our own school. That's how big it is. Like we have a big population and it's alternative. And it's a whole different world. It's a
Mhm.
whole different world. And I'm like, okay, all the stuff that you knew doesn't really apply right now with these type of students. Like this, the stuff that you would talk about and the stuff that you knew in gen ed world, that's not gonna work so well, you know. And so like I'm relearning, I'm reading books on it. I'm like, okay, let me read a book on children with autism. Let me read a book on because I don't know that much in this world. I know about like creating relationships and but I don't know that world too well. And that's the world that you're in right now, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that, the biggest challenge I would have when I was working in typical like charter school and we were trying to mainstream students was I'm not a special education teacher. Like I don't know what to
Yeah.
do with them. Like that was
Yes.
the biggest thing. And you know what? It was fear talking. It's always been fear. And
Mhm.
newsflash, special education teachers do not get what general education's teachers get. So it's like these two experts in their fields need to collaborate to really provide the student the best quality education. And so a lot
Mhm.
of my work, I eventually became a director of special education for a network of charter schools. And that's exactly what the work was. Like, how do we collaborate and come into the same room and create a program that meets their needs and also supports the behavior challenges? But it just requires people to want to research, have a beginner's lens to approach this and to treat
Yeah.
each individual student like a new problem, to not problem because students aren't problems, but a new
Puzzle.
puzzle. I love that. Yes, a new puzzle that together will break. It isn't just sped's problem. It's our
Mhm.
our issue. We all need to
Mhm.
work together to support this student.
Yeah, and so how did you do that?
So I think a lot of it is around first really assessing what exactly is the core issue that's coming up. Each individual teacher is going to be different.
Yeah.
And so really talking about, well, what is getting in the way? Well, I don't know how the student, I don't know what to do with this behavior. Okay. I will train you as a special education expert and I will be there and support you through it. But the one thing that I stopped doing is I wasn't doing it for them. And the
Mm.
reason for that is when you're in a gen ed setting and you have the special education teacher constantly being the one that's redirecting the student or intervening, then the student develops a relationship with the special education teacher, not the general education. So you're never able to take yourself out of it, and the student always feels othered. So that
Mhm.
always impacts the relationship. I'm never going to be able to support a general education teacher from developing that relationship with the student if they're not interacting with one another. So let me be
Yeah.
your earpiece and as you interact with the student.
And how did they take that?
I have to have a good relationship with the teacher first. The
Yes.
teacher has to feel safe with me first. It
Right.
can't be a top down, this must be what we have to do, and you just need to do it. It can't be
Mhm.
that way. It has to be okay, what is your worry? What is your concern? They have to trust me that I'm going to support them along every step of the way. I remember I was working with the school leader once, and we had a challenging student, and this was in my director of special education role. I mean, I would go in to support. He was in kindergarten. I'd leave with huge scratches right here,
Mhm.
all like he'd just scratch me up. It was right after the pandemic. And I knew this school leader really wanted to integrate students with special needs, was trying her best, but she was asking already, okay, when can we remove the student? When can we send them off to another? Because they're impacting all the other kids. And I had
Mhm.
to sit down and really suss out, I know that you have this belief about kids, but now you're saying this, like what's getting in the way? Like, what is it? And then when I started drilling down, it was that parent complaints were coming through and she didn't know what
Mhm.
to do with them. So once I said, got it, I can help you with framing that. I can help you framing language for parents. I can even sit there with you and help you have those conversations. How do you feel about it now? And she's like, I'm on board. So sometimes the buts that they're giving or the excuses or the things that they're saying to you are not the core issue.
Of
There's
course.
feelings
Yeah.
underlying that you need to unearth first.
I like that. I like how you're able to see that. I like how
Yeah.
you're able to see the underlining issues and not take they're doing for face value. You're like, oh wait, there's something else behind that, and we're gonna get to that. And I think that that's very important as a school leader. And yeah, that's I try to do that when I'm always looking behind what people are saying and what they're doing. Like, okay, there's a reason for that. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason for you saying that, I don't, oh, I'm not a special ed teacher. I can't deal with this behavior. Oh, yeah, you're right. It is fear, and it's fear. And, maybe you didn't feel you have the training, but it comes down to fear and getting out of your comfort zone and
Yeah,
being able to, help out. And
yeah.
I like that.
I think a
And so,
lot of
mhm,
teachers in the profession, or when you become a lot of educators, when they go into teaching, they want to get it right. They
mm,
want they want a plug and play. Give me the manual that tells me how to do it, and I want to get it perfect.
yeah,
And when it comes to students with special needs, there's no manual. There really isn't a manual. Every student is unique. And so
that's
you
right.
have to be comfortable with not knowing what's going to come out of whatever strategy you're using and still trying it. You have to be comfortable with saying, I'm not sure. Let me find out and let's try this. Now let's try this. But going back to belief systems, childhood trauma, how you were raised to be, feeling like you have to be perfect, feeling like you can't make
Ooh,
mistakes, that
yeah.
comes
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Those are all good points. And how does that lead to education wellness? How does
yeah,
that lead to the wellness of the educators? And that's a topic that I did want to bring up with you, and you had mentioned you want to talk about.
yeah,
You have these teachers who are overwhelmed, and it might be a situation like this where they're getting sped students in their classroom now, and they don't know how to deal with it. They're getting behaviors that they don't know how to deal with it. I just had a recent podcast, and I asked the individual. I said, why do you think that educators are leaving education? What's the one or two, number one reason, number two reason, do you think they're leaving? I'm gonna ask you the same question. What's the number one thing why educators are leaving now?
oh, it's hard to drill it down to just one thing. But at the core, I don't feel they feel seen. I don't think our educators feel seen. They don't feel
Hmm.
safe in our schools. We talk a lot about creating safe schools for our kids, but that can't exist without creating healing spaces for the adults in the building too. And I say
Hmm.
healing because educators, we've gone through a lot over the pandemic, and as we come back and try to function again like normal, that can't happen unless we start really incorporating some wellness strategies into the work that we do. And right now, what I see is there are a lot of efforts into trying to support teachers with self-care, right? Like, oh, leave by a certain time and go get a massage or exercise. Those are band-aids. Those
Yeah.
self-care is just a way to cope with the pain that we're under in our schools and feeling unseen and feeling like the systemic imbalances are just too much to bear. It's just a band aid. What we need is to really heal our nervous systems, find ways to heal the way that we cope with stress, find ways to regulate ourselves when we find ourselves in situations that are making us feel really anxious. The number of educators right now with anxiety is insane. There's a study that I reviewed recently that at least 50% of school leaders are thinking about leaving in the next year because the stress is just through the roof. It's just unmanageable at this point. So I do feel that because teachers are losing hope that things are going to get better, that's why they're starting to leave and just trying to find another career that'll give them a lot more balance.
Hmm. Yeah. That yes. We talked about in my other podcast, and we were talking about how teachers feel like they're not supported. They feel like they're not supported, and they feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they're not supported. They don't have a voice. It's like, do this test, do do a test, do this state test, do this iReady test, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, do this, prepare for all these testing things, and you don't have a voice and you can't say anything about it. You just have to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to get observed. And, this is going to reflect negatively or positively on you, and so you got to make sure that you're ready and like, mm, and then you have to make sure the test scores are good, and you know, all of that, all of that stuff. And then you really don't, as a teacher, you really don't have a voice necessarily to say like, oh, hold on, I don't want to do any of this right now. I don't think it's good for myself or for my students. You just got to do it, right? And then as the leader in the school, the assistant principals and the principals, they're being told, hey, you got to make sure that these things are done.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that these things are done, and there's nothing you can't say anything about it. You just
Mhm.
got to make sure these things are done,
Mhm.
and you got to make sure that attendance is at this level. They got to be this attendance rate, and you got to make sure that's taken care of. And as a school leader, you're like, that's stress on you, and then you find ways to, I don't know, you have to disseminate that information to the teachers in a
Mhm.
way where it's not gonna cause damage. I don't know, cause harm.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's a tricky dance, And so there's that going on, and it's very stressful. And even as a school leader, do you feel supported? Do you feel like if you reach out, you'll get the support that you need to make sure that your programs run smoothly and that you get the personnel that you need to make sure your programs,
Yeah.
like, so it's tough. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress, and I could see how, you know, I would say that maybe last year I was like, oh, I can't believe, teachers are leaving and people are like, this year I'm like, okay, I could see how it's possible. I could see how teachers, educators, educators are like, it's too much stress. I don't want to deal with this. I'm
Yeah.
I'm okay. And COVID gave us a taste of that not working feel, like that oh, like I'm at home, I'm walking my dog, I'm enjoying my morning, I'm drinking my coffee, I'm not rushed, I'm not, this is just this good feel. I don't know, I felt it was a good feel. I was like, oh, this is not bad, I like this.
Yeah.
And then you get thrown back into the work world and you're like, this is fast paced, fast moving. How do I handle all this stress? It's tough. And if you never try to get better, if you've never, you know, I must say that, I mean, this is not the answer to everything, but I feel like the more you read, the better you get. The more the media, the positive media that you consume, the better you will become as a person, whether that's what you read, what you watch, what you listen to, the people that you're around. The more you're around good things, the better you will get as a person, and you'll be able, you just become better. And if you're not doing those things and you're consuming media that's negative, that doesn't make you feel good, that makes you feel inadequate, makes you feel like you're less, that's not a good thing.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear you saying in that is you have to be very protective of your village, right? And the energy that you're around and what you consume and how it really feeds into your viewpoints or how you believe, like the hope that you see in the world or the lack of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can tell a lot about uh, how a school is ran and their leader by the culture in the school, right?
Right.
I think there are schools that do a really great job with culture and leadership, and they're under the same scrutiny and expectations as all other schools. And I think the difference comes down to the leader and their ability to really own the humanness of the role that they're in. They're not just fulfilling the expectations of the district or their bosses, but they're also leading a team of people, real human people. And as
Mm-hmm.
much as they can also balance their humanity in the work that they do, I think it is possible to really get everybody to buy in and together decide, okay, this is what the district is asking of us. Oh, it's going to be really hard. How can we make it happen? Let's make it a team effort. We're all in this together, And there are some decisions that as a school leader, you do have the ability to say, okay, we can cancel this PD, right? But give me this. And I think as a school leader, we have to be able to decide what are the things that are in our control, what are the things that are not in our control, guide others through the things that are not in their control, allow them space to share their emotions, their how they're upset about it. And I think that's the other piece. A lot of leaders do not know how to hold space for people's emotions without taking them personally.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
need to allow them to vent. We need to allow them to release. We need to release the pressure valve. Because if we don't, that's when you start having all these murmurings in the lunchroom and they never get to
Right.
you because they don't feel you're giving them the space to really share how they feel. When you give them the space, you listen to them, you validate them, and then bring them to the table. Okay, let's figure out a plan together. Now you have community. Now you have buy in. Now we're in this together. It's not us against you.
That's a good point. And as a school leader, I guess the feeling of I guess the fear of doing something like that is that people might think that you're not an adequate school leader, and they're
Mhm.
over here complaining, and so that you don't look bad, you quiet them like, oh, we're gonna stop that right now, we're gonna move on, and because you don't want to you don't want to put yourself out there where you're like, oh, this person's not that good of a school leader, and fear, fear of looking bad, and
Yeah.
you know yeah, that's I could definitely see that. I've never I think that the most healthiest, like you were saying, is the most healthiest approach to take is to just put it out there, to allow the conversation to happen,
Mhm.
and to not take your role as a school leader so serious.
Mhm.
In my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm the school leader. I'm over special education. I might be the boss of some people, but I'm human. I'm a human being. I'm a human being just like you. And my education level is probably just as high as yours. We probably have the same master's degree. We're the same. Um, and I might not be here forever. I'm not permanent. I'm not permanent. So for the time that I'm here with you, for whatever amount of years, I'm just gonna do my best job to make this place a great environment to work in,
Mhm.
and that's it. And I don't take myself so seriously. Like, I'm not the boss, and oh, here comes Mr. Vergara. Be scared. He's No. I might not be here next year.
Yeah.
They might move me, and then for the one year, I always take it in year chunks. For the one year that I'm here, I'm going to just give myself to this place as much as I possibly can, and be as human as I possibly can, and
Mhm.
help out as much as I can. And I'm not going to get it right all the time, and I'm not perfect, but I am human, and you will see my how genuine I am, and you'll feel how genuine I am. And I think that that's important. If I was a stuffy guy and I just like, you can't, unapproachable, and you can't talk to me, and I'm the boss, that's not the place. That's not what I'm trying to create. I'm not that. So
We need to do for our staff the same thing we're asking them to do for our students, right? We need to build
mhm,
relationships with our staff. We need to
mhm.
make our staff feel safe to be
That's right.
themselves,
That's
right?
right.
And know that we're going to see the highest version of them even when they can. So, like the example I was giving you earlier, where I had a school leader that was in fear saying no to something, I held the highest version of her to her and I mirrored it for her. I know this is you, right? But I only could say that because I had gotten to know her already. So with you,
Yeah.
Mr. Vergara, you're walking around the halls, you're checking in on everybody, you're establishing those relationships regularly. So when you do have to give feedback or when you do have to say no to something, even though you may not like it, but it's not in your control, they can take it better because they know there's mutual respect, there's trust, and there's safety.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's where did you get this point of view? Where
So
did this come from?
I think I I think it's a combination of my experience and just kind of where the trajectory has taken me. Um, in the last year, I've really started um, exploring more about healing modalities to really support my school leaders because I saw the stress in them. And I became a somatic breathwork practitioner. And I learned how stress really lives in our bodies, and our society doesn't really allow us space to constantly get the stress out. And you get the stress out by feeling the emotions, by crying it out, by being upset, by letting it out. And so we constantly are holding in everything because we want to look professional.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is we get dysregulated. And when we get dysregulated, we get stressed, we get anxious, we get cut off from our highest self. So when you say, where have you gotten it from? It's from my own healing journey, honestly. Healing through trauma, healing as a parent, as an educator. I'm starting to bring in some of the concepts that I've learned into the work that I do with the school leaders I support and seeing the value of that. So school leaders that are open to learning about these strategies on how to navigate stress in themselves first, I've seen how they then start seeing so much value and they start incorporating it with their staff.
Yeah.
And their school really starts shifting from this stress, everything has to get done and everybody's stressed and let's just hurry it. We're so caught off from our humanity when we do that. But when they see a
Mhm.
leader that seems grounded every day, yeah, we have all these deadlines, but she's not rushing around and demanding things. She's having conversations with me. That changes the whole culture in the building. And when you have staff that acts that way, it trickles down to our kids. Our students feel
That's
safe.
right.
Our students feel like they can be themselves too. So it's just a
Hmm.
win-win for everyone.
That's beautiful. That's so true. I love it. For me, it's like I try to be my most genuine self, like my most real self, and I don't try to be anybody else but me. And I have to catch myself, and when I feel like I take myself too seriously, or I'm just acting away, like I'm letting somebody else's vibe dictate how I am going to act now. Like if I'm with this other person and they're acting a certain way, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm saying the same thing as this person, but I don't really agree with that. But I feel like that's to me, I catch myself like that's not me. That's
Yeah.
false. That's the false me. I'm my own person. I'm that stubborn kid who said hit me hard, and hit me. That's me. Like no. And so for me, that's helped me a lot. Um, like I said before, the media that I consume, all the things I consume have helped me a lot. And I still get stressed, and I
Yeah.
still, things still work me up. Yeah, things still work me up. I still have to like breathe and calm down and remind myself, there's human beings around me, and I need to act human. And it's not about the deadline, and I gotta
Yeah.
smile and say good morning, and
Yeah.
say hi.
Yeah.
And these are all important things that we need to do in a school community, and it does trickle down to the kids. The kids can feel it. I feel like the environment that I'm in right now, it's a good environment. I feel like it's a good environment, and I'm barely working my way into talking to the kids and like getting in the classrooms and getting the teachers to know who I am. And it's a couple months I've started this new school, and it's tough, but it's good. It's good work. So can we talk about your business?
Yeah.
Let's talk about
So
your business.
I am building a community that's really invested in the type of work that I was talking about, of transforming the way we navigate stress and anxiety,
Hmm.
um, learning to take responsibility for how we're internalizing that and doing the healing work to really suss that out. And a lot of it starts with just becoming more aware of your patterns, and taking responsibility for learning new strategies to heal from it, not just cope from it, not just put on Netflix or, have a drink, but really get into your body and feel it. And for me, what transformed my life was breath work. I used to I did talk therapy, I did meditation, I would do the
Mm,
affirmations in the morning, I even did hypnotherapy. And it helped a little bit, but I never really believed it. Even
mm,
when I was super stressed, I was like, it's fine, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I couldn't get out of that stress mode. And later
yeah.
I learned that it's because stress starts in your body. It doesn't start in your mind. And only 20% of what you are trying to tell your body from your brain actually comes down, but 80% of what's happening in your body travels to your brain. So the fastest way for you to regulate your nervous system and find calm is through breath work. It's the power of breath.
Mm,
So
mhm.
I can do a simple box breathing exercise for 1 minute and my body completely lets go of the stress. And now my thinking brain, my problem solving brain can turn on and I can solve problems more easily. But you
Hmm.
have to learn these strategies and implement them and be consistent with them. So my work is around just really healing the way that we view anxiety and stress. And I also have somatic breathwork sessions that I lead virtually. If anyone is curious about what does this look like, I have that information also as well on
Yeah.
my Instagram page.
That's awesome. I watched the whole video of I think his name is Win Hom, or I can't necessarily. It's breath work. Yeah, Win Hof, something like that. And watched a whole video of it and looked at his techniques. And he's like in the I don't know, some frozen place in the cold with no shirt on, and he's just there breathing. And I'm like, damn, that's impressive. You know, yeah, I'm like, there's something with that. Like I
There's,
find myself.
I was going to say, there's different types of breath work
Mhm.
that is not the same. That's why I'm trying really hard to build a platform specifically for teachers and educators because there's a
Good.
lot of different types of breath work out there.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, he's like fat. He goes fast. He's able to bring down his body temperature. I'm like, oh man, this is amazing stuff. Like, how do you do that? What kind of crazy? Um, but I do find myself breathing more, like in between, different stressful situations. As I'm walking, I'm breathing and I'm mindful of my breath.
Yeah.
Definitely mindful of my breath, and it does bring calmness. Even when I find myself when I'm faced with a tough decision, like somebody, I'll get a call and they'll tell me like, "Hey, Mr. Vergara, this is happening, and then this is happening." I always find myself going, and I breathe in like real quick. It's like an automatic. It's like, okay, like, and I'll give it like, but I find myself pausing, breathing, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
here we go. And
Yeah.
so yeah, and so I saw I was looking through your links, and um yeah, that's exciting. That's so exciting. So we're coming toward the end of the podcast right here, and I always end my podcast with asking my guests, what are some tips that you give to future educators that want to enter the field of education?
Yeah. Um, like I mentioned, I think we're entering a new era. It isn't just about um, learning how to be a good teacher. It really is about developing your resilience. So I would say the number one would be to really know your value. Um, Up to this point, it may be that you thought that hard work and will lead to worthiness and you feeling proud of yourself. But you'll be disappointed. And I think a lot of our teachers struggle through that stress that they feel because they feel like they can't accomplish everything on the to-do list. So the number one thing would be like, know your value is not tied to how much you get completed every day. You are inherently worthy as you are. Um, the second thing I think is linked to what I've been talking about, just really understanding your personal stress cycle and find tools to help you regulate. Stress is going to come up. You have to be ready to know what situations are going to cause stress and what strategies are going to use when those situations come up so that you're prepared. Um, and number three would be very similar to what you were talking about. Find your village. You need to find a village of people that are positive, that are committed to growth, have hope in what's to come, belief in students, because it's so easy to get caught up in negativity and toxicity. The work is hard. And without you looking, you're going to find that negativity. It's easy to find. You have to be very strategic in finding your village that will support you through the work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I almost feel a little healed through our conversation. Through our conversation, I'm like, I feel like a little healed, like a little bit. But I greatly appreciate the time that you have, and all you sharing with everybody that's going to listen to this podcast. I think it's a special podcast. I thank you for your time.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much.